So usually by the time we write, start recording, and sort of everyone's sitting around in the studio and we're almost done and we can see the finish line of recording, we start to talk about art. And in this day and age, Less Than Jake still puts importance on art. The visual side of releasing a record, we always find that being important. In these days, sadly, I feel because of how kids are getting music primarily, which is downloading or peer-to-peer or anything like that, they're missing this visual aspect of it. Unless you're buying the vinyl record, unless you're buying the CD, you're missing out on what I think is, you know, an equally important thing besides the music. I mean, I think that art gives a kid at home a chance to not only understand who the band is, but see who the band is and sort of get the culture of the band. So with Less Than Jake, I think that, you know, even going back to early 7 Inches, we always thought the art was important. Going from Jason Armadillo, who did art for Smoke Spot, he did the art for Losing Streak, as well as a bunch of shirts, all the way up to Anthem. And Anthem, we had a bunch of different modern artists interpret song lyrics for each song that was on the record of Anthem. And I thought that was cool. I mean, it was cool to work with people that I respect in art as well. You know, during Anthem, it was Shepard Fairey and David Cho and Camille Rose Garcia. And those are, you know, I'm a fanboy, I guess, for those people, but it was cool to work with people that respect what they do as far as art's concerned. But to go back to it, Less Than Jake, we always think that, you know, it's an important thing to have art, the packaging has to be, you know, a little bit above the last record. I mean, with Borders and Boundaries, it sort of left us in a lurch because Hello Rock to You had this comic book and it sort of stretched the whole length of the record. And Borders and Boundaries, we sat around and we came up with sort of this mileage disc that's on the back of it that was die cut, that you spun, and it was mileage away from Gainesville. So one was Sylvania and it was X amount of miles or kilometers away from Gainesville. It was a cool thing. On this record in GNVFLA, we enlisted our friend Richard, who is Horse Bites, and he's done the Absolution for Idiots EP for us, but he's a good friend, and I think that he's talented. And above anything, I've learned over the last maybe, you know, 10 years of being in the band, that working with friends and working with people who you respect is an important thing. So we're sitting in the studio. We finally, after lots of banter, decided on GNVFLA or Gainesville, Florida, or however you want to pronounce it. The funny thing about that, even prior to deciding on the name, I had the idea for what we wanted, which was black and white photography. Then on top of that black and white photography, we wanted to create this world that's around Gainesville that you wouldn't necessarily see to the naked eye, but that's there, this sort of hyper reality. And when I started to think about who could do that and do it well, you know, my logical choice is Richard. And over the last maybe year and a half, he's done so many great pieces of art for other bands, like from Dead to Me, Strike Anywhere. And I think that when I approached him about the idea, he was sort of, you know, he was more excited to do it than I thought he would be, because it was his chance to step out of, you know, the box that people put him in as far as stylistically, and a chance to work on the black and white photos and put images on that. And for him, you know, I was kind of taken back by his excitement, and I thought that it was a cool thing that when you're working with someone on art, for them to be just as excited as you are. And you know, and when we were throwing around ideas, you could feel the excitement and that sort of creative energy start to flow. And I think that it's a cool thing. And on top of that, you know, it's funny because art happens in weird places, you know, and the inspiration for art happens in weird places. You know, we'll go back to the Less Than Jake logo, which is the Evolution Kid, which he's somewhere back there. I think we made toys of him before. But, you know, it was when me, Raj, and Chris were living together, and we get the, you know, we went to go check the P.O. box, and we got this letter, and this letter was from this guy, Peter Wamsowski. And on the bottom part of the letter, it was Jake, more than Jake, and then less than Jake. And it was a really striking image of this thin guy, this big chubby guy, then this little sort of kid holding a Pez dispenser. And we were so sort of stoked on that we immediately wrote him back, and then we called and we exchanged some letters with each other about how we wanted that Evolution kid to be our logo, and he was stoked on it and we were stoked on it. And that just goes to show that just by some random happening that someone who liked our band was great at art and had a great idea and sent it to us, and we were stoked about it enough that we use it to this day. So I mean, if you go back to sort of the days when we were releasing records on No Idea, where me and Var would be sitting in front of his computer and he would be working, chopping up things like with Pezcore, he did the art for that, or Unglued, and we'd be chopping up little pieces of art and clip art and making, the covers and the packaging out of nothing. And sort of, I remember that, particularly with Var and sitting in the office where he was at the moment. And I knew back then that how important the sort of what people see, and definitely judging by a book by its cover, judging a CD by its cover. So we've always been cognizant of that. And I think that Var helped Less Than Jake along in that, because he has a great eye and great talent. He was doing No Idea magazine at the time, so he was really great at layout. So I think that Var, out of anyone, really sort of ingrained this sort of idea in our head how important the art was and how important it was to sort of put out miniature works of art, and not to be pretentious asshole about it, but you want everything that you do to sort of stand on its own, and when people hold it, they get a general feel of who the band is and what the record's about, and I think that's a cool feeling. And I think that if I could say anything to bands in general, I think that try putting more focus on the art that is on your record, the art that's inside your CD booklet, the art that's on your t-shirt, the art that's on your website, because it does, in this day and age of how people download music, and it's a very big missing component of who a band is and what a band's about. So I think that, if anything, I just want to thank everyone that we work with, Richard and Var and Pete Ronsowski, Jason Armadillo, and the Eric Davison, out in California, because those people, I think, helped shape and mold the visual aspects of the shirts you buy and the records you purchase and the records that are in your collection. So thanks to you guys.